Hi there, everybody. My name is Kate, and welcome to my channel, Trinergy Awakens Naturally, very naturally. The last few videos have been on the fly when I'm in the middle of my life doing something else, currently hydrating. We're into the eclipse season right now. Today, we're going into the blood moon. However, truth applies year-round. It doesn't matter what year it is, and it doesn't matter whether it's a full moon or not. Truth is truth. So I was called to bring forward a story of something that was so very profound, profound teaching for me, and it was live, hands-on, in Technicolor. Oh my God, what do I do here? Learning to trust and learning a very valuable lesson. So let me set it up for you. A few years ago, I went through a divorce and I lost a lot of stuff in that. I lost virtually everything and had no money. And so I've been building up my life, since then, and creating as many opportunities to get involved with nature, to learn how to get myself around and not be quite the pampered princess that I had been, being driven around everywhere and never having to pay attention to directions or much of anything. My specialty wasn't in geography. And fortunately, my ex-husband was pretty good about that, and he was very kind about always taking care of that. Plus, he didn't trust me to drive him. So we had a camper back then, and it was a huge one that he insisted. I already didn't like to drive his Tahoe. It was a monster. I hated it, and I liked my little tiny compact car. However, it was more affordable for him to use the compact car to commute, and so I got stuck driving the Behemoth, which didn't thrill me. However, I did drive it, very, very white-knuckling it most of the time. And then we bought a camper, and suddenly it became important that, well, I don't want to have to haul this camper by myself every time we're going somewhere, so you need to learn how to do this, which was fair. However, I already didn't like driving the Tahoe, and the thought of pulling something behind it was even more intimidating. However, I have to say, though I am divorced from this person, and I really, lost a lot of respect in the divorce process, I have to say he was a very good teacher about saying, hey, you really need to pull your weight around here, literally pull that weight, because I don't want to do that for the next 10 hours. It's only fair. And so he showed me how to do basically camper operations. He figured out everything. He was an outdoorsy kind of guy, and his job, necessitated him being really pretty much a MacGyver, and a lot of emergency procedures with his job, which I understood. I came from EMS, so I understood emergency procedures. However, ours are slightly different. They don't involve heavy-duty machinery usually. So anyway, he insisted upon it, and so I learned how to help him set up the camper and all of these different things. And so when I went through the divorce, the camper, of course, was gone along with everything else. However, as I was rebuilding, I moved out of the area that I divorced him in, and I moved into the mountains of Colorado. I came from a flat state, and so I decided I would go to Colorado and go see something new. I don't want beach anymore. I want mountains, and I'm so glad I did. However, it brought back home for me that, oh, you still don't do geography, and you still, are not going to be able to get by anymore with somebody else driving you if you want to go to some of these places that you'd like to go. And so I got better about being able to drive into elevation, and it was really creepy and crazy, and I didn't like it, and I still don't love it. There's some certain, places in Colorado. I haven't made it over the Continental Divide yet, that's going to take a few minutes, but it took me a while. It took me about a year before I could get past a certain point, and eventually, as I was working on building my finances back up, every year for 3 or 4 years, I attempted to go and get my own camper because I really enjoyed the experience with my family, with my ex-husband. I just really didn't enjoy pulling the camper. However, I enjoyed the end result was that we're going to be spending time together as a family, and that was really cool. So, and it was fair. It was absolutely fair that he'd say, hey, no, you need to do this too. If you want to enjoy the benefit, get on board with all of this. So it was fair. But eventually, this past year, I was able, finally, for my birthday, I was able to buy my own camper, and it's much smaller, significantly smaller, about 10 or 12 feet smaller, and my car is not nearly as large. However, it is within the weight limit for being able to haul the camper that I bought. However, the first couple of times I drove my car and the camper, there were issues. So got some of those issues taken care of on my car, and on the camper. And I bought all of the safety equipment that I could. I bought a stabilizer to keep it from wiggling around, and the automatic braking system that goes with it. I had that, floofed up. Do everything you can to assist me so that I know what I'm doing. Backup camera, everything, whatever it would be. Please just, show me what I can do, put that on there, and, teach me. And so they did. And one of the problems that happened was a transmission issue, which just was not seen by the mechanic whenever it went in for its final check before I was going to start driving away, with my new life, off the lot. It was just missed, and it wasn't a huge deal. However, my car overheated, and I panicked and went, oh shit, oh my God, what do I do? It's going to blow up. It didn't blow up. However, I took it back, and I felt pretty confident that, okay, this was a short duration. It was up in elevation a little bit, which was the test, that I got it home successfully, no problem. And then the next day, I'm going to take it up into this park that's not that far away, not that far up in elevation from where I live. And so that immediately it started to have, this problem. So I take it back to the mechanic, say, hey, fix that, and get that brake assist and everything, between the dealership, the camper dealership and my mechanic, get all of this together, please, because me having a heart attack on the way to go camping really defies what I'm trying to do here. So what ended up happening after I got it all done, I made my next trip, plans for my next trip, which was south. And I thought, well, we're good because I'm going downhill. At least I'll see if there's a problem, but I can't just stay within a 15-mile radius of where I live. There's not a lot to offer, and what the hell. And I was beginning to really doubt myself, question myself, and feel stupid. All those things that happen, when we feel a little bit intimidated. When I feel intimidated, I started berating myself, like maybe I didn't buy the right camper, maybe they were wrong, maybe. And so I'm going back obsessively and checking out my camper specs, my car specs, and going, nope, the weight limit says, nope. And there's clear evidence that, look, this car is rated for this, the camper is weighed in at this, and it just has to be that whatever the problem is, it can be fixed because it's not an incompatibility with the equipment itself. We've gotten all of this stuff done. And so I patted myself on the head and said, okay, I'm good, and started on my journey and decided I would go south. And on the day that I left, it was 101 degrees in Colorado, where I live. And as you're going south in Colorado, it gets warmer, as you can imagine, in August. So the car started to overheat, and I just was out of my mind almost instantly with, what the hell is this? What is this? This isn't fair. No. I mean, the whole thing, old victimization, old tapes, old, plays, old loops of, oh my God, how could this be happening to me? 747. And I had to pull over, obviously, because my car, I don't want it to blow up. It doesn't matter if I have a camper or not. I'm going to be living on it on the side of the road, with my dog, and we had food, we had water. However, it was limited. Lesson learned. It was limited for that kind of engagement to be on the side of the road, at 100 and something temperature and without enough supplies, So I had relied a lot on being able to buy, much of what I needed when I got there. But I do keep my, Colorado ready go bag with some stuff in it. And I've been lazy, so lesson learned, don't do that shit ever again. But more importantly, I figured, well, I've got roadside assistance for my camper. I've got it for my car, and I have cell coverage, I'm good. And I have a battery, an external battery, a huge one, giant one, could power the car probably, to be able to call, to charge my phone, etc., if I need to. So I've taken some of the precautions, many of them. However, still, some bonehead stuff there. Lesson learned, that I pulled over and I started praying, because that's what I do. I pray. If I don't know what to do right away, then I start calling upon that which does know. And it's a lesson, obviously, because I was spinning around in my own head, feeling stupid, feeling incapable, feeling victimized, and something dropped in of, hey, the kind remind here is, Kate, there's another way, and you really must find it, because you and your dog cannot be on the side of the road. There's tons of people going by. However, nobody's going to stop and help you, until you alert someone that you need assistance. And a roadside, just somebody pulling over as you flag them down really isn't going to answer your question anyway. You have roadside assistance. Stop this, please. And your dog is getting nervous, So as I sat there praying, what came to me is that, okay, I can call for this, I can do that, perhaps I need to roll all the windows down, of course, because it's 100 degrees, and no more air conditioner. We're not doing air conditioner, no, never again. Not that day. But I rolled the windows down and was starting to calm down and do some breathing exercises to keep myself from spinning off into outer freaking space, which is exactly where I was headed with that, oh no. And so I did some breathing exercises and did some affirmations, and I heard, keep doing it, keep saying it, keep saying it, even if you think you don't believe it. This is for you to move right through. And if you give up now, shift your perspective on what you're willing to do to change your own damn mind, because you have to. You don't have a choice. You have no one to turn to in terms of another person who's going to help spin this for you, up or down. It's on you, baby. It's all on you. And you have a live animal in the back that really, he's relying on you to not be frightened and freaking out and making a scene in the car at a minimum. So it became a little bit easier, but I got to tell you, that was some deep gripping hard into the bare minimum of my soul with, oh my God, I don't know what to do. That change your mind and change your perspective. And I had just recently listened to Louise Hay say something about when there's a problem. Of course, it was synchronicity and random, right? Synchronistically, like 2 days prior, I had heard a little short of her saying that all is well, everything works for good. Whatever the affirmations are that she put out many years ago, saying that when there was a perceived problem, that's what she did, 11/22. And so I thought, well, Louise did a pretty good job. She's a great mentor, great teacher, and started a whole publishing company of a lot of really good places for people to go with their great work, and so let me try this out. And it's not that I never prayed or did affirmations or, was willing to change my mindset. It was just that triggered so heavily 11:44, the deepest parts of me of feeling so stupid and incapable. I'm just a dumb woman. I'm not any of that. And my ex-husband was right. When we went through divorce, I heard a few things about my personality that he didn't particularly appreciate, and some of it was true. I backed out of doing anything that required too much, reaching into my bag of discomfort, and driving large vehicles, backing up, things like that were just that's for you to do. And you're gonna have to move past that, because we don't have time for this, Kate. You just bought this camper. Did you not realize that you're gonna have to back up? Of course you are. You knew that. However, now that you've had something that's not a backing issue, what are you gonna do? Because this is a part of camping world that happens. And I knew that we had, in my married life, we had experienced some things, some roadside stuff. However, it was always taken care of. Well, guess what, baby? You're on deck. Take care of it yourself. And so as I sat there working through my affirmations and going, okay, I can do this, and I just kept saying in my mind, work through the fear of it not happening and assume that it is. And I said, okay, please, just show me what I need to do, and I'm going to wait, 3 or 4 minutes before I call roadside assistance to give this a chance to settle itself out. When we phone up God real quick, we might not get that answer immediately, especially if we're working through some karmic energy. And I knew that's what was happening. However, it tweaked my last damn nerve. 1313, I almost couldn't stand myself. And no lie, I did not know that there was someone that had pulled up behind me. However, this man, I could hear him. He's calling to me. I have all my windows open, and we're there pouring sweat. Me and my dog. I can hear him. He's saying, "Excuse me, hello," and I'm thinking, "Oh my God, am I dead? Am I psychotic? What the actual is this for real?" And this beautiful man in a mechanic's overalls. I mean, damn, dude, it's 120. Are you okay? That you're wearing that? And he's peering in. He goes, "Are you okay? Do you need gas? Do you need anything?" And I said, "Oh my God." I said, "Thank you. No." I said, "I'm not okay. However, I don't need gas." He goes, "Well, do you need some help?" I mean, he was so gentle and he was so kind. And fast forward that ultimately I said, "No, my car's just overheating, and unless you know something that takes care of overheating right freaking now, then this is going to be a matter of sitting here and waiting until that little sign is no longer on." I've looked in my manual, and I've been online, and it's going to probably take it about 40 minutes, and we're about 10 minutes in, so I'm busy having my panic attack. Thank you for interrupting that. But I said, no, there's really not much you can do. And I asked him a few things about, is there something I can do when I get started? Does it help for me to turn the heater on and, pull that heat off of the radiator? Is that, or the, whatever that other transmission. So I'm having a blackout right now. I said, will it help? And, oh, yeah, go ahead and do that. Leave the windows open, put the heat on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, okay, so at least the wheels were churning and burning enough. And I heard enough out of my ex-husband years ago to at least attempt to troubleshoot some stuff, and this guy's a mechanic, roadside something, and he says, okay, he goes, well, I'll leave you. He says, I said, any chance that you're going to be sweeping this area? Is this your district or your area? And he said, yes, it is, and if I still see you on my swing back through, I will definitely come back and pick you up and take you and your dog somewhere, unless you want to go now. And I said, no. I felt pretty solid that, no, the universe just answered with you here, so I'm pretty sure that I had to work through my fear that I could be okay to move this on independently. Thank you. However, thank you for reassuring me that you will make sure that, I'm not here baking on the side of the road without somebody at least being able to go and take care of the pets that I still have at home when I don't make it back with my dog. And he said, hey, he goes, one last thing. He said, would you like to have some water? And I said, yes, as a matter of fact, that would be really fantastic. I'm sure my dog would really appreciate that, because we're down to our last 2 bottles, and I'm pretty sure, once I give him one, I'm willing to give him mine. However, he's probably going to want even more. And so he came back, and I said, hey, how do I pay you? What do I do? And he said, no, this is on me. And I said, do you have a business card? Because I'll write you a review. I'm happy to do that. And he said, yes. And he handed me the card. And his name was Andy, and he was with Roadside Angels. I can't tell you how ironic that name is, and Roadside Angel. Then I said, oh, you guys have an amazing sense of humor. Seriously, how cheeky is that? But it wasn't out of the woods. It really wasn't. However, I had to laugh at the irony, the synchronicity, whatever you would call that, the humor that, please don't take life so seriously, because I was down the road in my mind with, okay, what happens? What's the worst thing that can happen? If my car blows up and it just absolutely doesn't, I probably can get my car or my camper towed. I know I can. I was already in there with how I was going to, be able to sustain the bankruptcy and, then living in my camper on the side of the road somewhere. I was down the road troubleshooting, which I believe in, please troubleshoot all the way down to the most horrific thing you can think of right quick. That works for me. It's just a matter of, you can't spin into that and stay there. You got to come back out of it. And before that, I'd never had a major problem for, the last few of those little disruptions in my world. They hadn't been that problematic that I thought, okay, my logical mind could say, yeah, stop bending this around somewhere. You've thought about the worst possible thing that could happen, and that shit isn't going to happen, because you have this in play, this in play, this in play. But I had enough that was not going right, that I hadn't prepped for, and that was triggering me into that place of guilt and shame, and that dirty, shamey girl that could never do anything right. All the messages I heard when I was a child, that I was stupid, that I was slow, that I couldn't do anything, that I was a terrible driver, that I was a terrible person, that I, just was absolute moron material. That really just punched me right in the throat with, oh my God, oh no, because I don't have enough water, I don't have enough food. I was relying on being able to get there safely, and I didn't plan this. The whole list was a mile long, and it kept me from getting to the solution, is that ultimately, if your car were to absolutely blow up, have you had enough demonstration that if your car was totaled and you still had to be paying on that, and that car that doesn't work, you absolutely do have a place to live, and you're not flat broke, you have a job, you have retirement, you have things, you're not absolutely destitute. So please, let's not rest in this, but damn, oh my God, damn, did it take a whole day, a whole night, a whole everything afterwards to kind of debrief from that. But in those few minutes of being able to get a hold of it and shift the perspective enough, kept me in alignment with being able to ask for what I wanted, which was, I need some help, I need further help, I've troubleshot this down as far as I can, and now what do I do? And make a decision, friend, of, okay, in 3 or 4 minutes, I feel better about this. It wasn't resolved. That's what I really want to say, is that it wasn't resolved. However, it was a matter that I kept hearing, keep saying what you're saying. You're working through a mind programming thing. You're working through brainwashing bullshit that you heard for a long time from a lot of people, especially yourself, that was indoctrinated early. You're listening to mind programming, and that mind programming needs you to punch that in the throat instead of allowing it to steal your voice and steal your identity as a person who can cope and who can, in fact, handle this emergency. It's not quite the emergency that you think it is, because neither you nor your dog are on, the side of the road with no shelter, no cover. And, even though it's 100 degrees out, you're actually doing pretty well. The breeze is kicking up and you're in a great spot for this. So believe that you are taken care of. Believe you're worthy of being taken care of, which apparently is being challenged right now. But you got to keep moving your feet. In terms of moving the mouth was the same in that moment of moving my feet forward. Don't sit down in this clown show. You must, in fact, move through the matrix. You must move through that gaslighting and that horrible programming that told you were too stupid to figure stuff out. In the past, whatever may have been true, it doesn't matter, baby boo. We are not operating on any old system that would tell you anything nasty, ugly, or hateful, or shameful, or dirty about yourself. That's some old garbage. That's how you know. And once I got to that point of, okay, I don't have to feel peaceful about this. No, you don't have to feel peaceful about this. You do have to keep saying it, though, until you can reach your mind and grab a hold of that tail and say, excuse me, I'll take it from here, Bob, on that. That no, this may not run away from me and take me with it, so that I'm so terrified that I'm on the side of the road crying to, someone who might be able to help me, or I move into some panic attack that I no longer have. Really, I really don't. Why would we step backwards and go into that? This is a test, if you will. This is simply the practical application of your next skill base is going to need to include you. Now, understanding, Kate, that sometimes 21, don't wait. You have to keep moving your feet, moving your tongue to say, no, I refuse to believe what is getting in my way. There is a solution to this problem. There is a way for me to figure this out, and there is help that is here for me, whether it's in the form of Andy the Angel guy on the side of the road, Angel Roadside Assistance, or it's me being inspired to call, for roadside assistance of my own. Whatever it would be, the tow truck, whatever it would be, that assistance is here for me. But damn, if it didn't take me a few minutes to work through that programming that was trying to tell me that, you should have done this, the shoulda, which was also brought up in that little bit of prayer time, a whole lot of that prayer time, simultaneously saying the things out loud that you've been told in the past that, in your mind, you've told yourself that I need things to be a certain way, that I need things to look like a certain thing, and that help is on the way by making sure that help is external. Help is here. Help is within you. Help is you. And anything that you draw to you is here to help you. It's to assist you. And when you get bent up and turned around and believing something that isn't true, such as, I'm not worthy of this, I don't deserve this, I'm too something, and you start shoulding on yourself, we already know, Kate, we're wrong. So remember that now, 2244, that shoulding, when I say I should have known better, I should have, that's a self-deprecating and self-abuse, etc., that is external to anything that can help you. That's an old program. Those are faces that said it. However, those aren't faces that matter, because the programming, those faces aren't in here with you, but they left the residue of that bullshit that you need to work through. So set that shit on fire and say, no, there is something here for me to learn. Fine. Show me what I need to learn. It's a matter of being willing to shift the perspective, throw up a little bit, which I did, and keep it moving, friend, move faster than that with what you're willing to believe. Unless you want to spiral out, it just wastes time. So being able to stand in the moment of that terror, that fear, whatever it is, actually taught me a great deal. And it got me through yet another episode. Every time I reach a new spot, I think, cool, I feel much better about this. Well, good. That's going to push you to your next uncomfortable spot to get through whenever it happens. It's not a meanness or an unkindness or anything of the universe or my team or inside of me that I'm just attracting misery. It's a matter of standing in the presence of any fear that I would ever have and being able to combat that and say, no. I'd like to gently ask you to go away, which is exactly how that usually happens, is, yeah, I don't succumb to that. You got to go now. However, that needed an absolute punch to the throat. Nope, you're going to have to take a junk shot and no, but it took me a few minutes to well up deep within me that most frightened place, that childlike place that said, no, I can't do this, you're right. That is not for the deepest, most wounded part of me, the youngest, most incapable of doing any adult function quite normally, and that would be expected. That part is the one that thought that it was in charge of having to make a decision about how we're going to ungank this mess and get out of here safely. And living in terror and fear just isn't my thing anymore. I work on that quite a bit. And so it came as a shock. It came as a titter. It came as a lot of stuff. And I'm not kidding. I had to throw up, quite a number of times. And it was probably at least 36 hours before my nervous system finished twitching that one out, and really having all the kinks and the jerks and stuff that really felt uncomfortable. However, that too this is the residue of the somatic release from your body. And thank you that we could do that, because you are always taken care of. You always are. It just, you can't put a label or an expectation on how that's going to happen. I could have never 2025 expected that Andy from Angel Roadside Assistance would be zipping by at just the time, about 3-4 minutes into my panic attack, that he's going to zip by and say, hey, is there something I can do? Absolutely nothing mechanically that you can do, sir. However, thank you for literally being the angel who changed my mind and helped me to see the humor of the universe sometimes. And not all times are those things, humorous or funny. And believe me, I wasn't very ready to laugh about it until a few hours later, when I couldn't help myself. Like, that's pretty cheeky and sneaky and hilarious and all, However, I do appreciate the fact that the synchronicity was there, and it didn't matter how I received it. It didn't matter whether I was grateful for it or not. It was still there. I could have missed that opportunity, and I'm so glad that I did not, though. And so I learned better how to more carefully regulate my own emotions, and know that 2626 is 88, that it's not always going to go your way in terms of what's going to feel the best. You're going to have to keep marching forward and stomp right over all of that mind programming bullshit that would try to stand in your way. This isn't a matter of, your heart understands you've been convicted to stand in your truth and stand in your power, and to be fearless and courageous and all that other stuff in many other situations that were far more daunting than this. This is calling you to move through, even though you're having to push through the perception and the shift and the bullshit to actually override that. That is hacking the matrix, pure and clean. So anyway, I hope that's been helpful to you in some way, and I hope that you enjoy your day no matter what part of the day you're in. And remember to get within your skin, because you're divine. It is absolutely fine. And if that is helpful to you, use your mind, as your greatest hack, because our heart is often very pure when we know that it is. And we know that we really just want to stand in that courage. However, it's not very easy to do that if we succumb to the mind-bending stuff first. And so I hope it's helpful to you. Enjoy your eclipse season if you're seeing it then, or the full moon, whichever part of it that you may be seeing this. Enjoy your season, whatever season you're in. May it be a season of powering up and really, really, really getting brave enough to meet those mind programs head on and say, no, I choose to defy whatever the bullshit is that's trying to tell me something other than that I am totally safe and I am good. The universe is always working for me to have a good, healthy, positive, wonderful, loving, whatever experience, even if I don't think it is that, or it doesn't feel like that, or it takes me a few days, a few years, a few decades, a few lifetimes, however long it takes. It is always working for good. And the quicker I can get to understanding that, the quicker I can release all the terror and the horror of one little old bum-ass lifetime, here before that would have told me differently. 2828, perfect time to stop. Take care of yourselves. Get within your divine. Absolutely fine. Take care, beautiful souls, and I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye, friends.